So, quick review from where we are. Chapter Aleph, we were introduced into the animal soul and the godly soul. That's what we introduced you in Chapter Aleph. Chapter Bet, we started talking about the godly soul and all the sphirot of the godly soul, all the attributes, pretty much divided into intellect and emotions, how intellect gives birth to the emotions of the spheres. That's chapter 2 of the Tanya that we did. We discussed that all the souls came from the same source also, even though they look different over here, they don't have the same attributes. Perek Gimel, we discussed about the pretty much how the intellect gives birth to emotions when it comes to the godly soul. Intellect, in order to love God, you need to know God. If you don't know God, you cannot love God. That's already discussed in Perek Gimel. Perek Daled, which we did last time. Actually, no, we did Perek Hey last time. Perek Daled, we discussed the garments of the soul. Thought, speech, and action. And we said, even though it's not the soul itself, the garments of the soul, the thought, speech, and action, they are infinitely higher than the soul itself. Why? Because you connect to God itself. Thought, speech, and action is of Torah and mitzvahs. We're talking about the godly soul over here. And it's a way for us to connect to God. God is his intellect and will of God. The Torah is the intellect of will of God. So when a person has thought, speech, and action in commandments, he becomes united with God. That's what we did in Perek Daled. Perek Hey, last week, we discussed one specific mitzvah, the mitzvah of learning Torah. And we came to the conclusion that the mitzvah of learning Torah has an advantage on all the other mitzvahs. What's the advantage? That in all the other mitzvahs, when you do the commandment, then the commandment is hovering around you. But after you finish the commandment, that's it, the commandment is not hovering around you. But when a person learns Torah, the understanding of God remains with him. So that's why it's called mazon. It's called food for the soul. Just like when you take food and you eat it, it becomes part of you, right? So is learning Torah. You take godliness and it becomes part of you. That's what it is. It's Pesach, so we need to finish the beer. We need to. It's Pesach coming. Okay? So that's where we were last time. Okay? Today, we're going to start. We had like 3 chapters discussing the godly soul and how it works. Today, we're going to start discussing the animal soul. And you're going to be surprised. Because it took us 3 chapters to discuss the godly soul, but it's only going to take us a little bit to discuss the animal soul. You might ask a question, isn't that important? By the way, why are we discussing the godly soul and the animal soul? Because just keep in mind, from the beginning of Tanya, there's a battle. There's a battle within every Jew. Every Jew loves God in his godly soul, and he loves himself with his animal soul. That's the way. And there's a constant battle between the godly soul and the animal soul. We all know who wins the battle. 99 throughout the day, we're going to see today, the battle is not even a battle. We are not in touch with our godly soul throughout the day. And by the way, we're not talking about over here a person who's not religious. We're talking about a religious person. We're talking about a chassid. Throughout the day, most of the day, he's not in touch with his godly soul. He gets up in the morning. Think about any person you want. He's hungry, he's thirsty, he's worried about the kids, he's worried about his wife, he had a fight with the neighbor, he had this. 99% of the time, his day is consumed about himself. He's not thinking about God. Yeah, there are some people, maybe they learn in yeshiva all day long. But I'm talking about normal people. They're consumed by the world around them. And before we even start to get into the battle between the godly soul and the animal soul, it just gives us a quick blueprint of what the godly soul wants and what the animal soul wants. So let's start.
Did you say the godly soul loves Hashem and the animal soul loves me?
That's right.
Okay, I just want to hear it.
Exactly. Okay. The godly soul couldn't care less about you.
Right.
It doesn't mind if you die.
Right.
It only minds if you die if that's not God's intention. Because God doesn't want you to die, He doesn't want you to die. But He doesn't have, His whole experience is thinking about God. He's not experiencing about you. The animal soul is only thinking about you, never about God. As we're going to see soon. Perek Vav, if you don't know where we are, we're on page 23, 6th chapter, Perek Vav. Page 23, Perek Vav. Again, we're talking about the animal soul. Vehine, and behold, ze leumat ze asa Elokim. This one against the other one did God made. Whenever you think about the battle between the animal soul and the godly soul, always think about Yaakov and Esav. It is an exact analogy. Every story, Kabbalistically, about Yaakov and Esav is godly soul and animal soul. Esav is red, you remember. Why is he red? Because blood. The animal soul is in the blood. Everything, Esav wants to kill. Esav become the king of the world. Esav, you can see it's an exact analogy. The battle between Yaakov and Esav that continues until this day. You know, with the culture, the Western culture in Judaism, that battle is a constant battle within Judaism. It is exactly the same thing. But it says, Zelu mat ze asa Elokim, they were twins. Remember, Yaakov and Esav are exact twins. They're twins. They're the same thing. They came from the same mother and father. Kikmo. So if you want to know why we don't discuss the animal soul, because we don't need to. We already discussed it. Where did we discuss it? Kikmo שהנפש האלוקית כלולה מ10 ספירות קדושות, just like the godly soul has 10 attributes which are holy, right? That the animal soul are going to have 10 attributes which are impure, which are not holy, which are the opposite of holy. ומתלבשת, and just like the godly soul gets dressed up בשלושה לבושים קדושים, in 3 garments which are holy. Can somebody give me an advantage of a holy garment? Holy garment. What? It says the godly soul gets dressed in 3 garments of holiness. Thought, speech, and action, holiness. Give me an example. Anybody has an example? Prayer. Give me another example. Tefillin. Any mitzvah. Very good. Any mitzvah. Mitzvah means connecting to God. That's what the mitzvah means. The word mitzvah comes from shon tzavta v'chibu, connecting to God. So when a person gets dressed up in doing a mitzvah, he's connected to God. So just like when a person does mitzvah, he connects to God. כך הנפש דסיטרא אחרא, so does the soul on the other side. Over here, it's going to be a little bit confusing. See, the soul of the other side is talking about the animal soul, obviously. Why it calls it the other side? Because it doesn't care about God. It's on the other side. It cares about something else. Itself, not about God. Calls it the other side. Miklipot noga, from the klipos of noga. We're not going to explain right now klipos noga, because it's going to be explained later on. It's going to become a whole topic in chapter 7 to understand what this klipot noga is. So we're going to leave it alone for right now. Hamelubeshet bedam adam. It is dressed in the blood of the person, like we already learned on 2nd chapter. Klola, this has 10 ktarin de mesavuta. So we had before 10 sfirot kdoshot, 10 attributes which are holy. That's in the godly soul. In the animal soul, we have 10 crowns of impurity. Same things. There's 10 crowns of impurities and 10 spheres of holiness. one against the other. 3 garments of holiness, 3 garments of impurity. Exactly the same. It works exactly the same. One cares about God, the other one cares about me. And by the way, don't fool yourself. Some people think that it also cares about your wife. It also cares about your neighbor. It doesn't. It only cares about yourself. Yeah? We said by some Jews, it's a little bit of klipas noga, 1 out of, if you remember, 2,599 parts, it can be altruistic. But a day-to-day life, he doesn't care about the neighbor, it cares about himself.
So our care for others comes from our godly soul.
I don't know yet. We discuss. So far it's problematic, which we'll have to address it, because we see that the people do care about somebody else, but we can say it's just like pack animals, in order to understand. Just like wolves live in a pack, so does people realize that if I take care of the neighbor, he's going to take care of me. It's not that I don't really care about him, but it's beneficial for me to take care of him, so it's beneficial for me not to argue with the wife, not because I love her, because I want to have peace in the house. Yeah? In other words, that's where the thinking comes from. Okay? Shehem, so this 10 ktarim de mesavuta, hem 7 midot raot. We have 7 bad attributes. You remember chesed, gvura, tiferet, netzach, hod, yesod of the godly soul. The chesed of the godly soul means loving God. Chesed of the animal soul means loving myself. Therefore, if I love myself, therefore I love money. I love to be bigger than the other guy, and so on and so forth. Habaot me'arba yesodot ra'im, and that comes from the 4 bad elements, 4 bad bases, like we said, ruach, esh, hanizkeret lemala, that we learned before. Vesechel hamolidan. And just like it works by the godly soul, in order to love something, you need to have intellect in that something. Let's take an example. See, in order to love God, you need to know who God is. If you don't know God is, you can't love him. In order to love money, you need to understand what money is. This is why a 6-year-old doesn't love money, because he doesn't understand what money is. You'll put in front of a 6-year-old a $100 bill or a cake, every time he'll take the cake, because in his mind he understands the sweetness of the cake. He doesn't understand that with $100 bill he can buy 20 cakes. Once he gets it, that this $100 bill, he has the intellect that it was 20 cakes. Oh, now he's going to start grabbing the 100. But it needs intellect. In order to have an emotion towards money, you need to have the understanding that money is important. Otherwise, you don't have emotions. Same principle exactly. In order to understand that, in order for me to propagate myself, to be the best guy in the world, right? A 5-year-old is not interested in being with every woman that he sees. Yeah? A 20-year-old comes to his mind, he is interested in being with every woman he sees. Why? Because I'll spread myself, I'll spread my seed around the world. I'll become bigger than I am right now. I'll be all over the place. So once he understands the thing, that's where it comes in. Hanechlak le-shalosh. And just like we say the intellect in the godly soul, we explained chokhmah bina dat in the godly soul, chabad of the godly soul, the same thing, shem chokhmah bina vedat mekor hamidot, that this is the intellect that is the source of all the emotions. As we know, ki hamidot hem lefi erech hasechel. Emotions are comparable to the intellect of the person. כי הקטן חושק ואוהב דברים קטנים. A small person, he loves things that are small, פחותי הערך, things that are not important. Why? לפי ששכלו קטן, because he's got small intellect. וקצר להשיג דברים יקרים יותר מהם. He doesn't understand things that are more dear from that. By the way, when he's talking about the small one, he's not talking about age. There's plenty. We look at ourselves. The small one lives around us. I'll give you an example. Yeah, most people, what do they enjoy? So I'll tell you what most people enjoy. Sunday afternoon, a cold beer, and the NFL is playing, and you watch a good football game. Yeah, and a good steak, and you drink, you say some l'chaim, and you watch a good football game. Small brain, and you get a lot of enjoyment. You tell the guy, maybe you should practice 10 minutes on piano, or maybe you should do some music. You tell you, that's too hard. It's too hard. The intellect that requires to practice some piano or to practice a violin, that's already too much. In other words, he appreciates the beer and the football game more than he appreciates music. Because in his mind, music is not something so high. He doesn't understand the beauty of it. Or if you tell him, for example, maybe you should learn, forget Torah, just learn some intellectual ideas. Just forget about it, that requires a lot of intellect. He doesn't see any joy in it. Just like a kid doesn't see any joy in the $100 bill, it's not sweet to him. For that guy, it's not important to have some intellect. It's not important to have some understanding. And that's why you know what happens. How do you know how intellectual a person is? You know how intellectual a person is what makes him angry. If small stupid things make him angry, it means his intellect is very, very small. If it takes big things to make, the bigger the things, the more intellectual the person is. Usually, as we're going to see soon. Yeah? וכן מתכעס ומתקצף, they throw tantrums. By the way, you have adults who throw tantrums all the time. You don't have to have a child to throw tantrums. There's plenty of adults who throw tantrums all the time. My wife calls me a small child all the time. She says, you're like a child, you throw tantrums all the time. You know? And she's right. Yeah, I've never seen my wife throw a tantrum. If my wife gets angry, there's a good reason for her to get angry. For me to get angry, any stupid thing. Not anything. Why? Small brain. Small brain, that's the way it works. You know? וכן מתכעס ומתקצף מדברים קטנים. He becomes angry from small little thing. וכן בהתפארות, also when we boast. Who boasts more, men or women? Men, of course. Why? Small brain. I've got bigger muscles. I can jump higher. I can knock you out. Who cares? What are you, a boxer or you're a human being? You're intellectual? You'll find professors who tell the other professors, I'll knock you out. Are you guys crazy? That's how you argue with another professor, I'll knock you out? You get all these guys now, who go around, all these professors in universities who go around sketch Teslas. You've got nothing else to do, you're a professor in university, and you go around sketching Teslas? How do you become angry? How does the Tesla make you so angry? It means that even though you might be a great professor, but let's call it this way. It's not that the intellect doesn't run the emotions. Also by him, by the professor, the intellect runs the emotion. The question is, who's running the household? Are the children running the household or is the adults? Who are the adults? Chokhmah and Bina. Intellect, the intellect part of the person should be the adults. They should tell their heart how to behave. By us, by the animal soul, what happens? The emotions, the kids, the one who gets born from the intellect, they're running the show. They're telling the intellect, excuse me, I know you're a professor, I know you're smart, I know you can do a lot of things, but right now I feel like scratching the Tesla. I'm not going to think. Stop thinking. I'm going to control you. I know it's stupid what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it anyway. This is when you let the kids run the show. And you know where does that happen? In the animal soul. Godly soul, you won't have it. In godly soul, the parents run the show. The intellect run the emotions. It's not, in the animal soul, it's not that the brain is not capable of running the show. It is capable. And if a person is a ish, ben adam, like we're going to discuss later on, that's the way it will work. But the emotions take over. The emotions I'm running the show. You think I don't know that every time I get angry on stupid things, You think intellectually, I don't know I'm stupid? I know I'm stupid. So what happens? The emotions take over and they run the show. This is what happens. And by the way, it happens to everybody. If somebody comes and tells you it doesn't happen to me, he's lying. It is impossible. If he's a tzaddik, yeah.
Are we capable of beating the animal soul?
That's the whole Tanya. The whole Tanya is the blueprint how to do it. It gives you a step-by-step direction of how to do this. That's why we're learning it. In order to understand how to do it, first of all, we need to understand the mechanism of how it works. That's what we're doing now. And in a couple of chapters from now, we're going to start step-by-step guide of how to do it. וכן בהתפארות, and also in boasting, ושאר מידות, and all the other attributes. ו10 בחינות אלו, and these 10 attributes, הטמאות, the impure ones, כשאדם מחשב בהם, when a person thinks about them, or he gets dressed in them, remember these are the three garments, or מדבר, or he speaks in them, we're on page 25, or עושה, or he does.
It's actually page 24. In the small one.
Okay, so it depends. Okay. הרי מחשבתו שבמוחו ודיבורו, so his intellect, his thoughts that is in the intellect and the speech that is in mouth, וכוח המעשייה שבידיו, and the power of action that is in heads, ושאר איבריו and other limbs, נקראים לבושים מסעו. They are called the garments of impurity. Let's explain this a little bit. You remember how we said something very controversial in Perek Daled? We said that the thought, speech, and action of a person is higher than the soul. Remember that? Perek Daled that we said? And thought, speech, and action of the godly soul is higher than the soul itself. It says why? Because the thought, speech, and action of the godly soul elevates the soul to godliness. It takes the Jewish soul and connects it to God, makes it one with God. In other words, doing a mitzvah, that's the thought, speech, and action of the godly soul, connects the person, the soul of the person, with God himself. Over here, it's going to do exactly the same. Thought, speech, and action of the animal soul is going to do what? It's going to lower the person than being a human being, and it's going to lower him into a status of worse than an animal, as we're going to see it. Worse than an animal. An animal doesn't have the ability to elevate. It cannot control its emotion. It doesn't have intellect to control its emotion. We do have the intellect to control our emotions. We don't choose to use it. And therefore, our animal soul brings our thought, speech, and action, the garments of the animal soul, are going to take the human soul and bring it to the lowest of the worlds. Lowest than the human soul is. Lower completely, as we're going to see.
But why did godly soul have to go with it? Can stay what it is?
They both in the same body. See, they both are sharing the same body.
Can separate it in a way.
That's right. And we're not going to go into the idea. Always remember, I don't want to discuss it. The Tanya doesn't really discuss it. It just hints about it or discusses it in very, very short words. But just to remember, the godly soul cannot take control over the body directly. It is godly. The body is physical. So therefore, what he does, it's called a dibuk. If you ever heard of the concept of dibuk, dibuk is, I don't know how to say it in English, when one soul takes over another soul, when one person goes into another person and takes over. Yeah? So this is how actually the godly soul, it cannot control the body itself. So what does it do? It rides on the animal soul. It goes into an animal soul and it tries to take over the animal soul in order to have control over the body. So the godly soul, the godly soul and the animal soul are going to battle constantly. Who's going to tell the body what to do? Who's going to tell the thinking what to think about? The godly soul wants him to think one way, the animal soul wants him to think separate. And in a constant battle, like Yaakov and Esav in the womb. You remember Yaakov and Esav in the womb, in a constant battle? So we get there also. ל10 בחינות אלו הטמעות, שמתלשות בהם, that gets dressed in it, בשעת מעשה, או דיבור או מחשבה. At the time a person does an action, or speech, or thought. והן הם, so you want to ask a question, when do we use this animal soul? So we're going to use Shlomo HaMelech in Mishlei. Shlomo HaMelech in Mishlei tells you when you go against your godly soul. והן הם כל המעשים אשר נעשים תחת השמש. Every act that is done under the sun. Okay, now here comes something which we need to think about what he just said. And we need to think how actually it works. I know how to connect to God. There's only one way to connect to God. Mitzvot, do commandments. That's the only way to connect to God. It looks like if you are not doing a mitzvah and you're doing something, there's no in between. It's either you're doing a mitzvah, either you're connecting to God, or it looks like you're doing what? You're lowering the soul, your animal soul. There's no in between. There's no in between. There's nothing in between. That's why this is what King Solomon did. כל המעשים אשר נעשים תחת השמש. Any act that is taken down on the place, you woke up in the morning, you scratched over here. That's what it is. You were thirsty and you drank water. That's what it is. You want to do godly. Yeah? You have to have intention. What does it mean, intention? You woke up in the morning, you were thirsty, you realize that the thirst is going to take your mind away from davening, from proper prayer, and you say to yourself, I'll better drink so I can pray normally. That's already godly soul. Yeah? But if you were thirsty and you didn't think about God, you didn't think about money, you just took a cup of water, that's, according to this is animal soul. This is called sitra acha, the other side. This is against God. That's what he says, so very controversial. We'll have to discuss it.
If you're working, doing work, like working for a community.
Why are you going doing to work? Because you want to eat more steak in the evening?
You try to contribute to society and to your family.
To your family, why?
To support them.
Why? So you'll have a good time on vacation with your wife? No, the why is important. Why?
You need to learn Torah.
If you can learn Torah for it, then that becomes godly. If you're doing it so you can have a nice steak, that makes it. It's all, as we're going to see, which doesn't make sense. So right now, it looks like it's all thing about intentions. It looks like it only matters what I intend. If I intend my drinking to go to God, that's one thing. If I intend my drinking to go to me, it's another thing. But how does it exactly work? So we'll see later on. אשר הכל הבל ורעות רוח. Everything is stupidity and bad spirits. How do we know? So he says, it's not the Alter Rebbe says, I didn't invent this. The Zohar, כמו שכתב בזוהר בשלח, שהן תבירו דרוחה. They are the ones who break the spirit. In other words, they are mountains of destruction, let's call it them. Yeah? They are spirits of destruction. Let's call it this. חולו. וכן, and also, כל הדיבורים, all the speeches. For example, I came today into the class, first word out of my mouth is, how does it work in Israel with the tariffs right now? This is Kol HaDiburim, this is an example. There's nothing wrong with it. I wasn't discussing doing a sin, God forbid. I wasn't discussing sins. Kol HaDiburim, not just speech, Kol HaMachshavot, even the thoughts, Asher lo leHashem hema, that are not for God. If it's specific, in other words, let's put it this way. It's easy to know if it's your animal soul or your godly soul. It's easy. If it's not the godly soul, it's the animal soul. That's it. If you're not doing something for God, you're doing it for yourself. There's no in between. There's not a status. So it's not like, what did we think before this chapter? I'll tell you what I was thinking before this chapter. Before I learned this chapter, I was thinking this. When I do a mitzvah, right, I'm connecting to God. When I do a sin, I'm connected to the other side, to the evil. And then when I just live my life, it's neither here nor there. Over here it tells it doesn't work. There's no neither here nor there. If it's not God, it's the other side. It's either God, and this is why we call it in the Zohar, calls it the other side. Yeah? We're going to see that on the other side, later on we're going to learn that there are two levels. There are two levels of the other side. There's the other side which is really low, and the other side which is low but not so low. But they're both the other side. They're both not godliness. ולרצונו ולבנתו, שזהו פירוש לשון סטרא אחרא. This is why it's called the other side. Any act which is not for God is considered to be, in other words, you fighting. It's either you fighting for God or you're fighting against God. There's no in between. God says, you wake up in the morning. Think about it like this. King David comes tomorrow. And King David tells us, look, we have to beat Amalek. Whichever they are, let's say they're in Gaza, let's say they're in Lebanon, you have to beat Amalek. And we don't have much time. In other words, you have to dedicate your entire day to kill the... So either you're doing the job of what God said, then you're fighting for God. Let's say you give them ammunition to Lebanon to fight against us, that's a sin. But even if you don't give them ammunition, you just sit down and watch TV. Yeah? Even that in itself, you're fighting against God. God is saying, excuse me, you're a soldier in my army. I told you we have a job to do. And what are you doing? You're battling for the other side. This is negligence. You can't do that. This is exactly what's happening over here.
In Israel, quite a few religious so-called that didn't read the Tanya.
We have a lot of religious people who did read the Tanya and they still do it, like we say. This was written for religious people that did read the Tanya. And we're going to see, even if you're religious, you will fail. Forget non-religious. Okay. Yeah? It's got nothing to do with religion and non-religion. Yeah? It's who we are. This is the way we are. Animal soul. Yeah, that's why we need to understand how it works in order to have the blueprint how to not let it happen, which we're going to come later on.
Could we look at it as a triangle where we have the godly soul, the animal soul, and then the body? And we try to, there is a constant battle between the two, and if the animal soul wins, the body goes to the evil. If the godly soul wins, and if that goes to the body, then we're connected to Hashem.
Good. I just wanted to give you one more thing to think about. It was excellent what you said, but it's a little bit deeper. It works at the same time. Let me explain. It works in the same time. I'll explain what I'm saying. You can have an understanding of what the godly soul wants, and have a true understanding what the animal soul wants at the same time. You can have an emotions towards God and emotion towards yourself at the same time. In other words, there's a schizophrenic person who lives inside of you. One of you loves God. He really loves God. He learns Tanya. He concentrates on God. He has emotion when he's there. And at the same time, he loves himself.
When I'm davening, I have thoughts that are not good.
We're going to discuss that also. That's right. Yeah. And it's in the same time.
So you're saying it's feeding the body.
They're both controlling every aspect of intellect and in emotion constantly. It's two beings living in the same body. Think about it. They're two separate individuals who live in us, and they both control all the aspects of your soul. This one, all the aspects of the godly soul. This one's all the aspects of the animal soul. It's going to become more understood later on in the Tanya.
The godly soul is much weaker than the...
We discuss that also. You're right. We're going to discuss that also when we come to it. פירוש צד אחד שאינו צד הקדושה, which means one side is not the side of holiness, וצד הקדושה אינו אלא השראה והמשכה מקדושתו של הקדוש ברוך הוא. And you want to know what the holy part is? The holy side is? The holy side is when a person attaches himself to godliness. ואין הקדוש ברוך הוא שורה, and God doesn't dwell on anything על דבר שבטל, אלא על דבר שבטל אצלו. God only dwell on something that nullifies himself to him. In other words, what does it mean? You wake up in the morning and you say, I want this, but God wants this. Usually who wins? We tell God, excuse me, with all due respect, I'll daven for you, I'll give you a favor, but then my thoughts are whose?
You.
My thoughts are mine. You don't tell me what to think throughout the day. I decide what to think. In other words, am I nullifying myself to what God wants me to think?
No.
I don't. I decide that I'm going to be boss. I'm going to decide on what I should think or not. I will decide whether to get angry or not. Every time in my life that I got angry, I knew it was wrong. But you know what I told God? Excuse me, I decide if I get angry. You're not going to decide for me. I know that you don't want me to get angry. But you know what I want? I want to get angry right now. This is what I want. I'm going to decide what to do. Who's the boss, me or you, God? Yeah? So God does not dwell on anyone who is not completely nullified by him.
So what happens to a mitzvah that I do, and I'm doing it in order to satisfy my need to feel good about myself?
Excellent. So the mitzvah, very good question. Very good question. So, yeah, so it's a very good question. But because the mitzvah is a connection, is God's connection, even if you do it for the wrong reason, you're still connected. Even if you do it for the wrong reason, you're still connected. We're going to see, though, later on, that mitzvahs also need intentions. That's later on. But you connected even without the intention. I'll give you an example. I gave the example many times, but it's since you brought out the subject, it's very good example. You see a person drowning in the lake, right? And you're not intending on saving him. You couldn't care less if he drowns or not. But then you remember, this guy is rich. And in his wallet, he's probably got a couple of $100. Yeah? So you jump into the lake, not because you care about him, because you want the wallet. It's a waste of hundreds of dollars. You jump into the lake, you swim over to him, and you try to take the wallet out, but it doesn't come out. So you're forced to take him to the shore, you give him one good him, you knock him out, and then you take his wallet and you take his money. You had all the bad intentions. You had no good intention. But you know what you did? You saved his life. Is that what you should do next time? Absolutely not. But what did you do? You did save his life. Even though you knocked him out, you did save his life. That's what a mitzvah is. Even with the wrong intention, a mitzvah connects you to God. Yeah. It's ben bepoal mamash. So who is connected to God? So there are some creatures who are always connected, who are always nullified to God, not connected, always nullified to God. Who are the creatures that are always nullified to God? Those are angels. An angel doesn't have the ability to tell God, I don't want. He doesn't even understand. Think about an angel like a magnetic force. A magnetic force doesn't have the power to tell the metal that comes out of him, I don't want to go this way. I want to go that way. No. It has to go that way. It's completely nullified to the magnetic field that's going to go around. This is what an angel is. It doesn't have a will of its own. It only does what God wants. It cannot have a will of its own. Ben בפועל ממש, whether it is really כמלאכים עליונים, just like the highest angels, who do God's will. If there's a magnetic force there, they will go there immediately. They don't have a choice. בין בכוח, whether it is by us. See, by us, we only have the potential. If we're going to be nullified or not nullified, that's up to us. We decide. So, see, an angel doesn't have the ability not to go against God. He cannot, even if he wants to. We have the ability to go against God. But we can choose to go with God throughout the time.
You don't have a free choice there.
That's right. We have the free choice. Either, at least by potential, we can always nullify ourselves to God. There's a potential there. I'm not saying you're going to succeed. But think about it. In every situation, you have the ability to. I cannot think of a situation where the situation comes and you have a battle between knowing what God wants and knowing what you want, that you'll fail. Every situation is possible for you to do the right thing. At least by potential. ככל איש ישראל למטה, just like every Jew down here, שבכוחו להיות בטל ממש. Each and every one of us can be really nullified to God. לגבי הקדוש ברוך הוא. How? And we can see it happens all the time. במסירות נפשו על קדושת השם. Jews throughout history who gave their soul away for the holiness of God. And you would think these are the religious people? No. We don't see throughout Jewish history, we see specifically that it wasn't specifically the religious people who were giving the souls to God. In many eras, it was specifically the non-religious people who was giving their souls to God, not the religious people necessarily.
Educated, maybe. It's not religious or not. It was educated and non-educated in a way.
Oh.
At that time.
It doesn't even... Okay.
The simple Jew, those are the guys.
That's why very good. It is easier for the simple Jew, the guy who doesn't understand, to give away his life for God than the intellectual. Yeah? As we're going to learn that later on. We are going to stop right over here. It's a good place to stop, and we'll take some questions now.